Folks, we are back for UFC Atlantic City. I'm going to break down this entire card for you and make a prediction on every single fight on this card. All of my links are in the description. Let's just go ahead and jump right into that. Bantamweight next. Angel Pacheco takes on Loughran. Loughran, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. In fact, picked up his first loss in his first UFC fight against Taylor Lapilus. So here he is trying to bounce back after his first career loss. He's taking on Angel Pacheco, who's 4-1 in his last 5 as well. His loss coming off in the Contender Series in a matchup that was just extremely high pace. I think combined, those guys landed well over 400 strikes. Significant strikes, maybe? I mean, I don't know. It's something crazy like that. It's just a stupid number of strikes. Let's put it that way. Dude landed like 200 strikes in that fight, which is nuts because he still lost the fight. For Loughran, though, dude's a good striker. He's got good forward pressure. He's going to stick that jab out there. He's just going to come forward. He's going to jab, big overhand, leg kicks. That's kind of his game. Jabs, overhand, and leg kicks, and that's what he does on the feet. He's got decent enough power. Hurts you doing that. Not like one shot, put your lights out, but he can hurt you with them. Good wrestling as well, and his takedowns are set up by his strikes. Whether he's sticking the jab, and then he goes for that takedown, but you don't know if the overhand's coming or not. Yeah, that's an option for you. When he gets on top, he's got good ground and pound, and he likes the half guard position because he's very safe from there, and he can land his shots. It's not the best place to land power, but you can land more power than you can in guard, and you're a lot safer from there. So it's also easier to maintain that position than it is like a mount, for example. So for Loughran, he wants to get to the half guard, land his shots on the ground. He'll eventually take what you give him. Now for Pacheco, dude's a good striker. He's got tons of volume, good knees up the middle, good combinations, and he's incredibly durable because, that fight that he had in the Contender Series, you could clearly see that this guy could take a punch. Hopefully that didn't end, or take years off of his durability. Maybe it did, but he's still young enough that, especially in his career at only 9 professional bouts, that I think he's going to be fine going into this one. Decent grappling from what we've seen, limited sample size, but from what we've seen, he's got good ground and pound and decent takedown defense. And we know that this dude's got good cardio because he was still going at the end of that Contender Series fight, in which I've already said he threw like 200 strikes, or landed like 200 strikes. I don't know how many he threw. It was probably through the moon. This is an interesting one because the line is very, very heavy on Loughran. And I get it. He's a big prospect, comes out of Cage Warriors, which to me kind of seems more like a red flag these days. But comes out of Cage Warriors. They have the name. Good wins over there. He lost to a guy in Lapilus who's pretty gosh darn good in his own right. So it doesn't drop him a lot of stock. And on the other side, Pacheco is this guy coming off the Contender Series who lost but still got signed. Then again, the guy that beat him just got a win over Joshua Culibao in his debut, which is a pretty big win if you ask me. So it's like, okay, he lost to a guy that's actually pretty good because there's a Contender Series fade, but obviously Danny Silva was able to come in and do darn well in his fight, and that's the guy that beat Pacheco. It's tough, right? And this is going to make somebody mad in the comments, I'm absolutely certain, but there's a way you can play this fight both sides and still probably be safe, right? I don't think Loughran's finishing Pacheco. If this dude can make it through that war that he did with Danny Silva, I don't think Loughran's going to finish him. And you can get plus money on Loughran by decision. And I know that Pacheco's money line is plus money. Now, the only way you would lose if you play that is if Loughran gets a finish. It's a risk. Yeah, he could finish him, but I don't know that he does. I kind of like that. I don't know how I'm going to math that out. I don't know how I'm going to do all that yet. I think that is an option. I'm just toying with options. I haven't committed to anything really. But we're toying with the option. For the sake of a pick, gosh darn it, I'll take Pacheco and see what happens, right? If the dude can put out like 200 strikes in a loss, he could probably put out that many strikes in a win. Gets the scorecards, he might have a shot. So I'm going to take Pacheco to land more volume and get the win on the scorecards. That's where I'm kind of leaning. It's a wait and see fight. This is a fight that we kind of we'll learn a lot about these two guys fighting somebody probably more of their level, not fighting Taylor Lapilus, who's very, very good, and Pacheco's fighting a guy that's coming off of a loss in his first UFC fight. So we're figuring these guys out, but we've spent a lot of time on this one. Let's move on. If anybody's still watching after I picked the big underdog right out of the gate. We've got Andre Petroski taking on Jacob Malkoun. Now Malkoun's 3-2 in his last 5. Petroski 4-1 in his last 5. Interesting fight because they're both very much wrestlers. Now, for Jacob Malkoun, dude's a solid wrestler with good takedowns. The takedown volume and the mat returns are kind of what gets done for him. He doesn't let his opponents up too often, but he's typically able to get them back down, whether that be from mat return or shooting a brand new takedown. Now, in the striking, he's decent. Got kind of a boxing style, works the jab. The wrestling threat kind of opens things up, and he's got some decent, basic boxing combinations that he can put out there. On the other side, Petroski, solid wrestler as well. Dude's got good takedowns. He's probably got better control on the mat, and he's got a very tight squeeze when he starts looking for one of those, head and arm chokes, something like that. Decent striking as well. The power's there. Kind of loops everything, which is a problem, but that wrestling threat sets things up, so he's able to get away with it. The cardio is the biggest issue for Petroski, so keep that in mind. The cardio here could be a problem for him, because I do think that in the first round, the wrestling is going to be competitive. Petroski's probably stronger, but I think as the fight goes on, Malkoun's going to start looking better and better. And I do think that if Malkoun gets out of that first round, wears on Petroski a little bit, I think he's going to start being the one to take over in the grappling exchanges. And I do think he's going to get the win. I'm going to go with Jacob Malkoun. And you know what? Maybe there's just a little bit of something that rubs me the wrong way about an American with a hammer and sickle tattoo in Andre Petroski. So maybe that's part of it too. But we're going Jacob Malkoun. Let me know what you think. And the women's flyweights next. Melissa Gatto looks to get back on track after a couple of losses, taking on the undefeated prospect in Victoria Dudakova, who's now moving up to flyweight after a stint at strawweight. Dudakova, she's obviously undefeated, 5-0 in the last 5 fights. 3-2 for Gatto, coming off those couple of losses. For Dudakova, she's a good wrestler. She's got a very good body lock takedown. When she does get the fight to the mat, the control is pretty good. If she can get to your back, she's going to be able to control you even better. That is where she does her best work. She attacks submissions pretty aggressively, and she does a good job at looking for those and has a decent-sized toolbox at which she can work. Striking, decent striking, good forward pressure. She has really good long, straight shots. And she is pretty durable as well. A lot of people are going to say, oh, but she's moving up in weight class. She's going to be smaller here. I don't know that she's really going to be that much smaller. I do think it was a tough weight cut for her. I think she was just willing to cut more weight. And I think now she's just realizing that it's doing more harm than good for her. I think they're the same height, if I'm not mistaken, or around there at least. And I don't think it's going to be too big of a size difference. I don't think Gatto is going to be towering over Dudakova, and I don't think she's going to be that much bigger as far as muscle mass. But for Gatto, girl's very good in jiu-jitsu, right? Very active from her back, very quick to attack submissions, snatching up arms, working her, using her that swivel of the hips to get up there, does what she needs to do. She's very good at that. But the problem is she lacks open mat takedowns, and her takedown defense isn't the best. Why have good takedown defense if you're going to be very aggressive off your back and get a lot of submissions from your back? I understand that. But you also want the open mat takedowns to get the fight there if you want it. She is pretty good on the feet, though, right? She's decent. Her kicks are her best weapons. She does have decent power, though. But the body kick is probably her best weapon here. And I think if she can land a couple of those body kicks on Dudakova, that could start swaying things in her favor. Ultimately, though, something I want to point out. Dudakova in her last matchup, she got the win, and people are like, man, she didn't look that good against Jinyu Fry, blah, blah, blah. Come to find out, the girl has a staph infection. That explains a lot. She started to kind of fall apart as the fight went on. She still gritted through it. But this is a girl who on the Contender Series blew out her knee, still goes on to win the fight against an undefeated prospect. Then, in the UFC, staph infection, somehow still grits through it when she's just exhausted and wiped out from a staph infection, still grits through it and gets the win, does what she has to do. That shows me enough to say, I think Dudakova is going to get this one done, and I think she's going to be able to out-grit Gatto, and I think if she gets on top and is able to use that control, I think she's going to stay safe enough and not get subbed, win a lot of minutes that way. I think on the feet, it'll be competitive. It'll be a lot of the kicks from Gatto and a lot of just the straight 1-2s from Dudakova. And I think Dudakova is going to get it done. And one more thing I want to mention is Dudakova, if you are watching this, if you see this, get back to my boy Artem. Artem has sent you a message in the DMs, and he's asked you about a dinosaur, and you have not got back to him. So Victoria Dudakova, please get back to my good friend Artem. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know who you're picking, and I will get a rematch here in the 205-pound division. Anton Turkalj, who won the first matchup, is taking on Ivo Aslan. Aslan 4-1 in his last 5. Turkalj 2-3 in his last 5, yet to win in the UFC. Technically, both these guys are yet to win in the UFC, but either way, Turkalj 2-3 in the last 5 fights. All 3 of those being that 3-fight skid he's on. Went from being undefeated to 3-fight skid. So for Turkalj, decent striker. The volume is basically what gets it done. He's a bit wild on the feet, but he's got a good volume, and he's pretty durable. I put the asterisk there because he did get wrecked in his last one, but the dude has been notoriously durable throughout his career, except for maybe that Tyson Pedro fight. He's got good grappling, but it's not great grappling by any means, but he's good enough, and a lot of it's just because of the pressure he puts on people in the grappling. He's got good volume of takedowns. He's always attacking subs, and realistically, he's always just doing something, whether that's attacking a submission, trying to advance position, just ground and pound, going for something, and it keeps his opponent on defense rather than offense. And he does a good job at just constantly be doing something offensively. And that is probably his best weapon. And I know that it doesn't show up on like the stats or anything like that, but his best weapon is just always doing something offensively. Now for Aslan, bit of an unproven, right? Yeah, he won on the Contender Series, but it doesn't really mean a ton anymore. You never really know what kind of level of competition you're getting on the Contender Series. Outside of that, he's beaten a lot of guys that weren't very good, and then he lost to Turkalj here. So decent striker, very powerful hooks, just big looping wild hooks. And he does a good job at landing them suckers. And when he does, you're probably not going to feel very good. He's got a very powerful leg kick too, and I would say that might even be his best weapon, honestly. In the grappling department, the dude's got good top pressure, good ground and pound, but he's not good at all off his back. He doesn't really look to grapple as much as he likes to just go out there and throw those big shots. But if he does grapple and he does end up on top, he's good at just, raining down those big shots and keeping the pressure there. His cardio has faded on him in the past if he's gone past the first round, and that was against Turkalj. I don't know that he necessarily has bad cardio. This is a question mark kind of, but we kind of assume based on the way that their first fight went, maybe he's improved it. You can improve cardio much quicker than you can improve a lot of things. Cardio is something that, okay, actually, I don't want to go on a tangent about different types of cardio. There are different types of cardio. You have your lung capacity, your lung ability to, be working. You have your heart's ability to control its beats and rhythm and all that crap. That's the cardiovascular that comes from cardio. That's from the heart. But there's also the lung capacity, and then there's also your muscular endurance, and those are all three parts of cardio. I'm not going to explain that, whatever. But the lungs and the heart, those type of things, you can typically build that up by just doing cardio. Muscular endurance, on the other hand, is much harder and takes a lot longer to build up. So if muscular endurance is why it's looking like he's failing in the cardio, that might not be something you can fix that quickly. Either way, something I want to bring up, so a point that I want to make. A lot of people are really down on Turkalj because of his 3 losses in the UFC. And I understand. 3-fight skid sucks. I keep picking this guy to win. I picked him against Jeepers. Just retired. Pedro, my goodness. Sorry, it took so long. Picked him against Pedro because, Pedro kind of gasses in the first, similar to Aslan here. I thought maybe he would be able to, weather the storm. Didn't, got knocked out. And then Pedro goes on to retire. That's his only really bad loss, though. Because who else did he lose to? Vitor Petrino, who's still undefeated and looking like a world beater. So Vitor Petrino looking great, looking better every fight. He was competitive in that fight. And then he also lost to Jailton Almeida on super short notice. Jailton Almeida is a heavyweight that looked pretty gosh darn good until Curtis Blades, who's a top-tier heavyweight, beat him. So realistically, only has like one bad loss in there. Oh, gosh dang it. You guys they're wanting me to pick Turkalj again. Ugh, I hate this. I hate this fight. I wish this fight wasn't on this card. If it gets canceled, I'll be thrilled. Don't bet on this fight. I'm not going to bet on this fight. I'm actually probably just going to watch this fight and just be mad the whole time I'm watching it because I don't want this fight to happen. I have to make a pick on it. And then you guys are coming back with me, yeah, you suck at picks because you picked whoever you picked in this fight and they suck. I don't want to pick either of these guys. I'm going to take Turkalj because he won the first fight, and I think he's got the better gas tank. But darn it, I don't feel good about it. Hopefully you skipped this one and nobody's actually watching this. Let me know what you have. Featherweights here. Denis Buzukja takes on Conor Matthews. Matthews is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Buzukja 3-2 in his. Buzukja is 0-2 in the UFC. Hasn't looked the greatest there. Matthews actually making his UFC debut after going 1-1 on the Contender Series. For Buzukja, dude's a good wrestler. Powerful takedowns. He's got good takedowns from the clinch with the trips as well. Good scrambles. He's always attacking submissions, and he does like to take the back and start fishing for submissions from there. On the feet, decent striker with decent power, but he's very kill or be killed, and we've seen that in his fights thus far. On the Matthews side, dude's a decent striker. He's got good forward pressure, good volume. He's a counter striker as well, and he does a pretty good job even when he's hit of countering back. Takes the shot and then strikes back. The body kick is probably his best weapon on the feet. He's, I guess, outside of his durability and pressure, But he does get hit quite a bit. His striking defense isn't great, but he does have pretty good durability. We've seen it. He's got the dog in him. You know what I mean? Dude's got good body kick. Decent grappling as well. He's good at taking the back and looking for the rear naked choke. Interesting fight because I don't really know what I think of Denis Buzukja yet. And I don't really have a good read on Connor Matthews as far as level of competition is concerned because we haven't really seen it. But dude's only got one loss. Didn't look that good in that loss, but rebounded, got a couple of wins after that and looked a lot better, showed improvements. Oh, man. Buzukja coming off of getting just knocked out in less than a minute. But Emmers, that makes sense. This is a tough one to really pick here. Give me Connor Matthews to get this one done. I think he's going to get a late rear naked choke. We'll say end of round 2, potentially early round 3. I'm going to go end of round 2. End of round 2, Connor Matthews rear naked choke after a back and forth fight. And I think the pace and pressure of Connor Matthews is going to get it done. So that's where I'm at. Let me know what you have, and I will see you in the next one. Julio Arce taking on Herbert Burns in the featherweight division. 3-2 in the last 5 for Burns, 2-3 for Arce. Interesting fight. This is the biggest mismatch in odds on the card, and that's a bit alarming to me because Julio Arce is the biggest favorite on the card, and he also hasn't fought in quite some time. So that is a bit alarming. But let's break this down skill for skill and see kind of where we're at and why things are the way they are. For Herbert Burns, the dude's a grappler, and that is what he is best at. He's got super, super solid grappling, very large toolbox, attacks subs aggressively. He's got good volume on the takedowns. He's going to keep trying and trying until he can get the fight to the mat. In the striking, he's decent, right? He's got decent power. He's got good volume early. As the fight goes on, that falls off a cliff because his cardio falls off a cliff. And people are really, really down on Herbert Burns because of his last fight where he was just too tired to get up off the mat, which is, it's a bad look. It's a really bad look. But he's taken some time. Maybe he's fixed his issues. He's had a lot of injuries in his career. He's also clearly suffered from gas tank issues. But he's a very good grappler. And in round 1, this guy's dangerous against anybody, which makes me kind of concerned about the line on a guy that probably has a bit of ring rust. He hasn't been in there in quite some time. So for Julio Arce, yeah, he does have skills. He's a good striker, right? He's a good striker. He's got good counters, good movement, puts together combinations well. Typically on the feet, he's got pretty good striking defense. But when he does get hit, he does wobble a bit, you know. The chin, I wouldn't say it's bad, but you definitely see him get wobbled. Grappling, decent. He does have pretty darn good takedown defense, so I do like that for Arce in this matchup. And he can mix in his own takedowns when he needs to, but probably not going to want to do that here. I almost bet on Herbert Burns just for the fact that the line is crazy. Dude, like minus 500, that's a lot for a guy that hasn't fought in a long time. I know Burns is on a layoff too, but Arce, I think Arce, it's even been longer. So for Herbert Burns, I almost took him, and then I was like, let's see where the props come out, see what I can get for him on to finish in round 1 or submission in round 1, something like that. Ultimately, all the values on Burns, and I know that that's kind of a cop-out thing to say and still pick Arce, which is what I'm going to do. I do think Julio Arce probably gets it done. I think he's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet. I think he's going to outlast Burns. I think I'm just going to pass. If in a betting spot, you almost have to play the first round Burns sub because that's about the only thing that has any value on it. You're not going to play minus 500 on Julio Arce because he could go out there and get subbed in the first round. So I'm going to take Arce. Yeah, just going to kick my feet up on the coffee table, crack open a nice cold root beer, and I'll probably enjoy this fight. It's probably going to be a good fight, unlike some other fights on this, but one other fight on this card that I just don't want to watch. But let me know what you guys think. Do me a solid. Hit that like button for me. I do appreciate it. You're already watching the video, so you might as well just hit it while you're there, while I'm rambling. Virna Jandiroba takes on Lupita Godinez in the strawweight division. Godinez 4-1 in her last 5, 3-2 for Jandiroba. Good fight. I actually think this is a good fight, and I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people think it's going to be. Godinez, good striking, good forward pressure, good volume, just that 1-2 just down the pipe. She could put together combinations, but she comes forward with that 1-2 and just keeps throwing that over and over again often when she's just walking her opponents down. She does a good job of it. Good wrestling as well. She's got good control. The cage push is pretty good. She can get takedowns from there. But her fight IQ has been questionable in the past. It's getting better. I think she's starting to make better decisions. And I think in this fight, if she's going to listen to that fight IQ, she's going to want to try to keep this at range and be cautious of her forward pressure and still come forward with the 1-2s, but be cautious not to accidentally close the distance too much, because I think Verna's the better grappler. I'm going to cover that now. For Jandiroba, she's a decent striker, I guess. Realistically, it's just good forward pressure, and she's going to strike just to get to the clinch. And she'll throw enough at you that you can't just ignore it and try to fight off the clinch and fight off the takedowns. But she's not the best and most polished striker. Her striking defense isn't very good either, because she's going to obviously be looking for to grab the opponent. So her face is just wide open. But she seems durable as heck, so she can walk on through it. Once she gets to fight to the mat, she's lights out. This girl is very solid in the grappling department. Very large toolbox, and she can snatch up subs very quickly. She's got excellent control, and if she takes your back, or if she gets on top in a mount position, side control, something like that, or she can start looking for submissions, she can transition between different positions and look for that control, all while snatching up anything that you give her while trying to defend the pass of her passing to a new position. Virna Jandiroba is a better grappler here. I think she gets the fight to the mat at least 2 out of 3 rounds. I think she gets the win. I'm taking Virna Jandiroba, a.k.a. Rob Schneider, to get the win here over Lupita Godinez. That was kind of mean. I'm sorry, Virna. I think you're probably a really nice lady. But I think she gets this one done. I think she's a better fighter, because I think Lupita Godinez is going to be too willing to grapple with Virna, and I think that's going to cost her. Let me know what you think, and I will see. Nate the Train's in the UFC, and he's taking on Jamal Emmers in the featherweight division. Both of these guys are 3-2 in their last 5 fights. We're going to break these guys down a little bit, shall we? Jamal Emmers, solid wrestler that he prefers to use it more defensively. Yes, he can offensively wrestle. He does it sometimes, but he does typically use it defensively, as he is cool with striking. So, solid wrestler, very good takedown defense, probably some of the better takedown defense in the featherweight division. Good scrambles as well, and if he does end up on top of you, you're in trouble, because he's got very good top control. In the striking department for Emmers, dude's got good striking, good volume as the fight goes on. Early on, maybe not as much. He is notoriously a slow starter. Yes, he started faster in that Buzukja fight where he just knocked him out right away, but I don't know if it was necessarily an instance of him starting fast or just landing a good shot early. It's not like he doesn't do anything at first. But either way, argue with me if you will. Good volume as the fight goes on. The power's there, obviously. Got an excellent jab, but the problem is he doesn't defend leg kicks super well. And I think that's what cost him in that Jack Jenkins fight, which a lot of people think Jamal Emmers won. It was a split decision. Jamal Emmers probably could have won that fight. I might have leaned that Jamal Emmers won that fight as well. However, it was close enough that 2 of the judges' cage side did not think so, and I think that was probably because of the lack of leg kick defense, because Jenkins does land a lot of leg kicks. That's what cost him. That was probably the start. Well, no, I'd say the start was Jamal Emmers' win over Hussein Ashkabov. He's had 3 performances, his last 3 performances in particular, that even though one of them was a loss, really raised the stock of Jamal Emmers. The first one, beating Hussein Ashkabov and kind of bringing to light that maybe that guy wasn't UFC level, which is strange that it elevated Emmers, because a lot of times people just say, oh, fraud checked, blah, 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 this guy sucks, and it doesn't give credit to the guy that actually won. Emmers is a different case, because then he goes on to fight Jack Jenkins. When he fights Jack Jenkins, it's a close fight. And at that time, people were thinking, yeah, sure, he beat Hussein Ashkabov, but now we've got Jack Jenkins over here who's going to beat him, and a lot of people are on Jack Jenkins. Jamal Emmers makes it close enough that a lot of people thought he won. That raises his stock a little bit more, and then adds some credibility back to that Ashkabov fight, right? So then he moves on to knock out Denis Buzukja in like under a minute, 40-some-odd seconds or something like that? Maybe not even. So that there, Jamal Emmers is looking great. However, when you think about it, Ashkabov, we don't really know how good he is. Didn't seem that good in that fight, but it could have been because Emmers is good. Buzukja, not looking the best as of late either. So there's that. The Jenkins fight was a good performance. That's the one I think we can take the most out of. So where is Jamal Emmers on that skill set? It's hard to really say, but I do think he's gotten a lot more credibility as of late. When we look at Nate Landwehr, he's lost a little bit in his last few fights where people were kind of big on Nate Landwehr. Lost Dan Ige, he does have that knockout loss to Herbert Burns. That was just kind of getting caught in the clinch with a knee. That would have dropped most people. But for Nate Landwehr, dude's a good striker, right? He's a good striker in the sense that he overwhelms you with volume and pressure. He's going to come forward. He's going to make up for his lack of any polish on his strikes, make up for the lack of one-hitter power by just volume, pressure. And he does hit hard enough to do some damage, right? It's not like he doesn't hit hard at all. It's just not one-shot power. Emmers probably has closer to one-shot power than Nate Landwehr, but the volume and the output and the pressure of Landwehr is going to make up for that. The problem is sometimes he does get hit when he's trying to do this. He actually gets hit quite a bit, and that can be a problem for him. It hasn't really cost him too much over his career. I mean, the dude's got 17 wins and 5 losses. That's a pretty gosh darn good record. And he's got some decent wins on that resume as well. When we look at the grappling, dude's a good grappler. He's got very good ground and pound that sets up his chokes very well because it's just kind of a relentless volume, and he just jumps on that choke as soon as you give up the choke. Good front choke series to defend takedowns, as well as, if he just happens to be looking for a choke. But a lot of times it comes from defending takedowns, and he does have decent takedown defense. The area that I think Landwehr has the biggest advantage here is the pace. And he's got the cardio to keep that up over, probably 5 rounds, let alone 3. And I do think that is his best weapon here is the pace because, like I said, Jamal Emmers tends to start a little bit slow. Do I think Emmers can crack Landwehr, knock him down, and maybe get the finish there or even just win rounds that way? Yeah, I do. But do I also think that Nate Landwehr can win on the scorecards because he's putting out a higher pace, putting out more volume? Yeah, I do. And for that, I'm going to take Nate Landwehr. Might as well side with the underdog when I think it's a razor-thin fight, and I'm going to say Nate the Train gets this one rolling on down the track. That was super stupid. Let me know what you guys think. I've seen this fight announced at on a couple of sites at both middleweight and welterweight, but from my understanding, welterweight is the weight class they will be fighting in. So we're going to roll with welterweight. If you happen to know otherwise, put it down in the comments below. Njokuani takes on McKee. McKee is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, yet to get himself a win in the UFC. Njokuani 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Hasn't exactly had the best run as of late, but he does have a couple of wins in the UFC to his credit. We start on the McKee side. Now, another thing, this is a good chance for me to remind you, I do have more notes on both of these fighters. I'll put all those up on the Patreon, so if you want to check out the notes, that's where you can find them, patreon.com/138MMA. That's where you find the notes. For McKee, dude's a solid striker, right? He's got good volume. He works that jab, and he just kind of keeps sticking those long, rangy straights. Very damaging leg kicks. He just comes forward the whole time doing this, keeping his range while also throwing the jab and, long style strikes, but still coming forward, if that makes sense. So it's making his opponents either back up or he's circling off and using those long straights as he creates angles and works that way. Does a good job with that. Works the leg kick well. He's very durable. This dude can take a punch. This guy can take a lot of punches, which is good and bad, I suppose. On the grappling department, he doesn't really accept bottom position. So if he gets taken down, he's either working back to his feet or attacking with them choking arms that he's got. He's got them long, skinny arms, slip under the neck. You know what choking arms are. So he's typically trying to work back to his feet quickly or get one of them chokes. Now for Njokuani, dude's really going to come out of the gate, look for the finish, or probably just die off, fall off a cliff, whatever. In the fights that he doesn't, and he goes to decision and he tries a point fight, he just looks underwhelming. So I think that's actually his best path to victory is start fast, start hard, and try to end the fight early. Because he's a solid striker with absolutely devastating body kicks, tons of power, and he transitions seamlessly from striking range, clear out at distance, into that tie clinch, throwing his knees and elbows, which he's cutting guys up pretty bad with. But then he can also go right back out into a combination from range from the clinch. He transitions between these two things expertly well, clinch and the striking range. So for Chidi, if he can come in, use those type of techniques right out of the gate and bust up McKee, beat him down, and just get this fight over with early, he's winning this fight. If it goes to the mat, I don't think it will, but if it does, I think he might even have the advantage there. Not because he's necessarily a better grappler, but he should be the more, filled out fighter, unless he's just dead trying to make 170, because he's a big guy, right? But he does also have them choking arms because he's got long, skinny forearms. Definitely going to be skinny down at 170. So this is tough for me because I understand that McKee is going to be much better if this fight goes late. If it goes past the first round, McKee's odds of winning go way up. For Njokuani, I think that first round he's going to be very deadly, and I think he can get McKee out of there in the first round because he is just so deadly in that first. I'm going to take Njokuani for a pick. Here's what I want you to think about is if you take Njokuani as your pick and you have the ability to live bet, if we get past that first round as soon as you can, because Njokuani's winning the first round, drop a little couple bucks over on the McKee side if you did end up betting on Njokuani, because it's probably not going to look good for him after that. Unless he comes out slow, pacing himself, doing what he's got to do. Maybe he's fixed some stuff. Could be a toss-up there. But I do think Njokuani starts fast, comes out of the gate, tries to end McKee early, and if he doesn't, it's a spot where you can live bet. If you have access to it. If you don't, maybe just sit back, watch this fight. Kick your feet up on that coffee table and crack open a nice ice-cold root beer and enjoy the show. Let me know what you guys think. Featherweight's up next. Bill Algeo takes on Kyle Nelson. Nelson is 2-2 and a draw, actually, in his last 5 fights. 4-1 for Algeo in his last 5 fights. Now, for Kyle Nelson, this dude was looking like he was about to get cut from the UFC. Losing a bunch of fights, comes off a draw. Probably should have been a loss, but they gave him a draw. And then they put him in there kind of as a sayonara, see you later, dude, against an up-and-coming Blake Builder, a prospect guy that's, I believe, undefeated at the time. And they say, okay, Builder, go out there and beat Kyle Nelson so we can send him along, send him on his way. Kyle Nelson turns back that prospect. Kyle Nelson looks pretty good doing it. And they say, okay, guess we got to keep him around a little bit. He then goes and fights Padilla. Padilla goes out there, prospect, up-and-comer, looking pretty good in his fight before. Kyle Nelson turns him back too. And it's like, well, son of a gun. Kyle Nelson's got a couple of wins together. Kyle Nelson's looking good. What's changed? I think his training has changed a little bit. I don't know for certain, but it sounds like he's changed a few things in his training camps, figured some things out, and he's really starting to put those puzzle pieces together, right? At least in the proper order. Before, maybe they weren't quite the same, but now he's got that puzzle getting put together like he needs to. You put the edges together first, and then you start working your way on the inside. Kyle Nelson's getting it figured out. The dude's a good striker. He's got decent power. Not like one shot shuts your lights out, but one shot can definitely rattle you. He's got a good high guard, and he's got a body kick that is probably his best weapon on the feet. The wrestling, good wrestling as well. He can stuff takedowns pretty well, and when he gets on top of you, his top control is very good. He's fighting Bill Algeo, though, so someone that isn't just like a young up-and-coming prospect. Algeo's been around a little bit, and he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. The guy's a good striker that can strike out of either stance. He puts forward good volume. He has very good movement on the feet. He's durable as heck. He also works a body kick pretty well, but his is more of a front kick to the body rather than the roundhouse kick from Kyle Nelson. Either way. But for Bill Algeo, it's that kind of karate-style stance, lots of movement, lots of darting in and out, throwing this and that and the other, and he's trying to keep himself moving. Whereas for Kyle Nelson, he's going to try to corner Bill Algeo and try to land a big shot on him, push him up against the cage a little bit, make it gritty, slow it down, but gritty, you know what I mean? Whereas Algeo is going to try and really amp up that pace because he's got the cardio to do that forever. In the grappling department, Algeo is pretty darn good there. He's good grappler, decent takedowns, very good scrambles, and he's active on the mat, whether he's on top or bottom. He's always doing something, whether he's chasing submission, going for ground and pound, working to get back to his feet. He's always doing something. Honestly, this fight is closer now in my head than it would have been, a couple of fights ago, because a couple of fights ago, for Kyle Nelson anyway, I would have said Bill Algeo to run this guy over. But now I'm thinking, man, Kyle Nelson has a path to victory here, and it's to slow the fight down, make Bill Algeo fight at the pace that Nelson wants to fight at, which is not that just knockdown, drag him out brawl that Algeo gets in, because he's a durable guy, and he can usually take these shots and just break guys over the course of the fight with his pressure, volume, durability, things like that. Kyle Nelson's going to slow it down, wear on Bill Algeo, land some shots, win minutes that way. I don't know that he's going to have success with it. I think the movement of Bill Algeo is going to pay dividends for him, and I think he's going to be able to get this done by moving around the outside, landing his shots, and over the course of the fight, just outlanding Kyle Nelson. I don't think Kyle Nelson's going to just die of lack of cardio. I think Kyle Nelson's just going to get outpointed to a finish, or to the finish. So Bill Algeo's the pick. Probably by decision. Let me know what you think. Middleweight's up next. But first, I wear t-shirts with my face on them. The reason why is so you can see them, and so maybe purchase some for yourself. If you'd like to do so, the link is in the description of this video. If you don't want to, that's fine too. You're just not going to have this really good conversation starter of a t-shirt. We also have some that don't have my face on it. Those are good options as well. This is just the OG shirt, the original. So anyway, let's break down this matchup. Nursultan Ruziboev takes on Cedriques Dumas. Dumas is 4-1 in his last 5, 5-0 for Ruziboev. For Dumas, there's a lot of stuff going on about him lately. February, I believe he gets arrested for some sort of domestic disturbance of some sort. And then in March, so earlier this month, the dude has court for it. So where's his head at? Has that affected his fight? That's what I'm kind of wondering. That is a question that we don't really know the answer to. We won't probably know until fight day, and we might not even know then, depending on how the fight goes. But for Dumas, He's a pretty good striker. He's got pretty good power, and he's got good straight punches at range. He kind of flares his elbows when he throws them sometimes, but I think that part of that's just because he's got that long wingspan, and sometimes those arms start to chicken wing out a bit. Very good head kick as well. It's pretty quick, but he is wide open to counters at times because he starts doing this and bringing his hands back here occasionally, and that's not what you want. You want him here. You want to rotate through, keeping the elbow tucked until the point of the fist turning over. You know what I mean? So open to counters at times. It is what it is. It's pretty good otherwise. Usually he's the taller, longer fighter. He won't be here. Good wrestling as well. He has pretty good slams. He likes to pick guys up, toss them to the mat with a lot of force, and that's good because it can open stuff up for him, but also it uses a lot of energy. His takedown defense isn't the best because he often goes for that guillotine, which is very quick, and he's going to use that to defend the takedown. And is that good? Maybe if he gets it, but also it could, guillotines are hard to get in the UFC. So there's that. Ruziboev, decent striker, plenty of power. We saw that in the last fight. Pretty good volume. He's got long, rangy straights, but he backs up with his hands down, and I think it's because he's so gosh darn tall. He's like 6'5", so he can back up. Maybe not quite that tall, but he's pretty close to. And he'll back up with his hands down here, and that's not something you like to see, especially because, Dumas is going to be pretty tall as well, pretty long arms, so he could crack him there. Dude's a solid grappler, though. I think he's definitely the better grappler. He's got good sweeps if he does end up on the ground because his takedown defense is but that doesn't matter. He's got good sweeps. He's going to work to advance position when he's on top, and he's going to attack submissions. He's very much a Kimura specialist with an arm bar as an option too. Yes, he has other weapons in the toolbox, but that Kimura is his favorite. He's going to go to that most likely, and I think that's what he's going to do to get it done in this matchup by Kimura in round number 1. Nursultan Ruziboev, Kimura, round 1. Let me know what you think at middleweight, where Chris Weidman takes on Bruno Silva. Both guys are 1-4 in their last 5 fights, and typically with records like that, you would see the UFC feed these guys to somebody that they want to get an easy win for, and so on and so forth, and move them right along. But I don't know that that's the case, clearly, because Chris Weidman, he's 39. Obviously, there's not a lot of time left for him in the division, but we're in Atlantic City, which is pretty close to a home turf matchup for the guy. So, makes sense to put him on this card. Bruno Silva, still 34 and still an exciting fighter. Maybe they want to keep him around a little bit. I don't blame him. So give him a fight that he could win. If he goes out and loses to the hometown guy, you got to win there because the hometown guy gets a big win. Good deal. If he wins, well, okay, we get an excuse to keep around an exciting fighter that knocks a lot of guys out. So there's that. I understand the reasoning here. It's a win-win for the UFC. For Chris Weidman, he's definitely the better grappler and wrestler. Solid wrestling, solid takedowns, and solid top control. And I think if he gets on top of Bruno Silva, he can win a decision pretty easily if he's able to get those takedowns early and often. Now, in the striking, he's got a nice jab and some decent power, but overall, he's going to be outmatched in the striking because he's going against Bruno Silva, who is a very good striker with massive power. This dude has 23 wins. 20 of them are knockouts. That's insane. If he connects on Chris Weidman, Weidman's dropping like a sack of potatoes, and I believe that to be true. He's got good combinations as well, and he likes to put his knees mid-combo. So, he'll be, 2-3, 2, knee, 3, whatever. Like he'll throw the knee in the combination. He'll, get the hands going, knee in the middle, and then come back with the hands all seamlessly, and I do like that a lot. In the grappling department, when he gets on top, he does have some pretty good ground and pound. Didn't show so much in his last fight, but that was more just he needed to keep that fight on the mat because in the striking, he was just getting beat by the guy that was much quicker than he was. The power clearly favored Bruno Silva in that fight, but he just wasn't able to land flush because he was just getting outmatched in the speed. Speed kills, guys. That's what they say. But in the grappling, if he gets on top and he's able to really posture up, that ground and pound is brutal. I think Bruno Silva wins this fight at a pretty high clip, and I don't think that's crazy to say. We got a 39-year-old Chris Weidman who hasn't had a win in quite some time. He does have that win over Amari Akhmedov somewhere a handful of years. Gosh, I think it was still the 20-teens. Before that, his only other win was Kelvin Gastelum, and that was a long time ago. Gastelum at 185 was hit or miss. Hasn't looked good in a while. Bruno Silva's losing to guys like Brendan Allen. Sure, he lost to Sharaputin, but that was a close fight-ish. I mean, there was an argument for Silva if you favor the control. I think Silva's still got more in the tank than Weidman does, and I think he's going to get the win, and we might even see Chris Weidman retire here in Atlantic City. So that's my pick. Let me know what you've got. And welterweight co-main event next. And you might be watching this video and thinking, I haven't liked this video yet. Well, why don't you go ahead and do that now? Just go ahead and click that like button for me. Go ahead and get to doing that. Let's break this one down. Vicente Luque takes on Joaquin Buckley. Both of these guys are 3-2 in their last 5 fights. For Buckley, dude's a good striker. He's got good forward pressure, plenty of power in both the hands and the feet. His kicks are probably some of his better weapons. In fact, he has probably one of the best, if not the best, kick knockout finishes in all of UFC history when he got Impa Kasanganay with that spinning kick to the face and just dropped him like a sack of potatoes. Now, Kasanganay has gone on to do pretty good things for himself in the PFL. A lot of people argued that he beat Johnny Eblen. Maybe he did. Johnny Eblen got the win on paper, but Kasanganay looked pretty good, right? For Buckley, though, still here in the UFC, chugging away, doing pretty good. 3-2 in the last 5. Like I said, that's not a bad 5 on end. So for Buckley, forward pressure, power, body shots, all that kind of stuff, very good in the striking. He's got decent wrestling as well. He pulls it out of the back pocket every now and then, and he can mix in the takedowns as a change of pace, kind of just mix up a fight. And if he's losing in a striking matchup, which he has before, if he starts losing there, mixing in the takedowns is something that he can do pretty well. But he's going against Vicente Luque. Now, I understand there's a lot of concerns on the Luque side, and rightfully so, because the brain bleeding, right? The brain damage or whatever that he suffered in the Jeff Neal fight where he was just knocked out. I get that. That's a concern. Came back, beat RDA, and then afterwards says the reason he grappled like he did and just avoided any striking exchanges is because he was afraid of getting hit. That's a red flag. I understand that. He's going against Buckley, who hits harder than RDA. Not that RDA doesn't hit hard. It's just RDA is a 155er that was fighting at 170. Buckley's a 170er who was also fighting at 185 for a while. Now he's at the weight class he probably should be at. So, yeah, I could see that being a concern and why a lot of people are picking Buckley. I've seen a lot of people picking Buckley, and I understand why. That is the concern. Pre-Jeff Neal fight, Buckley versus Luque, everybody's picking Luque. Now, here we are, post that Jeff Neal fight for Luque. The concerns are there, understandably so. Where is Luque's head at in the sense of can he take strikes? Is he going to panic the first time he gets hit with a big shot? What are we going to see? Obviously, RDA didn't hit him with any big shots. So there's a lot of concerns. But to break down just the skill set, dude's a solid striker. Good combinations, plenty of power. His counters are lights out. And that lead hook is just money for this man. When he hits you with that hook, usually it's going to drop you. Now, the grappling, he's good there too. We saw it in the RDA fight, but we've also seen it before in the past. Good top control, good ground and pound. The Darce chokes. He gets those because what happens is he's striking with these guys, beating them up on the feet, and they're like, shoot, I got to get out of this. And then they shoot like a takedown just out of desperation because they're jumping for that safe space, that spot that they think is safe. And then he snatches up that Darce and puts him out. Skill for skill, Luque should win this fight every single time. But the concern is with the brain damage, and I am concerned with how Luque is going to react the first time he eats a big shot from Buckley if he does. I'm still going to take Luque. I think he's the better fighter, and he's not that old. He's like 32 or 32, right? He's my age. He's not that old. Watch yourself, guys. I'm not that old. I might be getting there for a fighter, but for a 170-pounder, he ain't that old. It's just the concern about that, because that is something that'll mess with you. And I wouldn't have blamed the guy if he just never came back and fought again. But I'm going to take him. I'm nervous about it, but not nervous enough to go to the other side. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in the main event. We've finally made it to the main event of the evening. And like the boss once said, put your makeup on, fix your hair up pretty, and meet me tonight in Atlantic City. Here we go. Erin Blanchfield takes on Manon Fiorot in the women's flyweight division. That was dorky as hell. Both of them are 5-0 in the last 5 fights. These two are easily the best prospects in the division, with Nacy Barber being just kind of right beneath that, right? The winner of this fight does deserve a title shot. In fact, both of these ladies probably deserve a title shot as is already. But here we are. And we've got to decide a winner out of these two. Presumably. I guess there's a possible draw or no contest, but let's hope that doesn't happen. In this matchup here, both of them, like I said, 5-0 in their last 5. 11-1 versus 12-1. Both of them, their only losses coming to pretty decent named fighters clear back earlier in their career. Manon Fiorot, striker. Erin Blanchfield, grappler. This has all the makings of a great main event, and I think that's what we're going to get. I think so. Let's break it down first. For Fiorot, strong striking abilities, kicks to all levels. She uses that side kick for the range control, right? Now, when she does her side kick, it's not like I did. Actually, it's more of the chamber up front and then rotate the hips and drive it through, because she uses that kind of like karate style. She has the roundhouse kick. She uses that more of her damaging strike as her opponent's coming in, whereas she's in the pocket throwing shots, and she'll snap that up and then snap that kick, going for that shin across the face or the body or what have you. But all of her kicks are chambered up in the same way. And the reason that's important, they chamber up front, and then she'll rotate the hip, or chamber up front and snap it forward. All of them are chambered the same way. The reason that's important, and if you don't know what a chamber of a kick is, I don't know, you probably can't see my leg from here, but it's when you bring the knee up and you're at that point where like you haven't extended the foot yet, but the knee is up and you've got the hip ready to either turn or extend forward, depending on the kick that you're going to do. The reason it's important that all of her kicks are chambered the same way, now I can finally get to this, it's because it sets up her Superman punch, right? And setting up that Superman punch, if you can do this, the chamber, and your opponent then reacts to that chamber. If every time I do this, my opponent knows that either, a side kick is coming, a roundhouse kick is coming, a front kick is coming. My opponent knows that if this is coming up, there's a kick, and they have to brace for that. And a lot of times, especially if you're going to the body repeatedly, their hands do this. From here to here. It's subtle, but if you do that and your opponent reacts, and then you come over the top with the Superman punch, you've got a clean shot right at their face. So that is why it's important that all of her kicks are chambered the same, and she sets up that Superman punch by doing so. Expert level stuff from Fiorot in the striking. She's got good combinations as well. She can counter strike. She does that good because what she does is she keeps that range, and as you finally get past that side kick and you start rushing in, now she has all this distance to see you coming in, and she can counter you as you try to come in, and she does a good job with it. When she gets her opponents hurt, she does come in with a flurry of shots, and she does a good job of following things up after that opponent is hurt. She's got good takedown defense as well, and if she does end up on top for whatever reason, typically after dropping an opponent, her ground and pound is pretty good too. When it comes to Erin Blanchfield, yeah, she's got striking. It's decent. She's got good volume and good forward pressure. She's looking to grapple. She does have a sneaky good head kick. Like, it's a sneaky good head kick. I don't think she's catching Fiorot with this, but she does have a sneaky good head kick to keep in mind. Grappling is where it's at for her, though, right? Why is this important? Because if she can close that distance and get to the grappling, this is where Fiorot is going to be in some serious trouble. At range, the opposite is true. If Blanchfield can close that distance, she's got a very good opportunity just to control the rest of the round, right? She's got takedowns of the traditional variety as well as the trip from either, the clinch, or even kind of not even in the clinch necessarily, but more of like the body lock or just different areas in the fight up against the cage. She can trip the feet out from under. She does have a pretty good cage push. We saw that in the Santos fight. She's got a very large toolbox when the fight does get to the mat, and she's working to advance position all the time. And often, that is when she's snatching up her submissions, is when she's working to advance position and her opponents are saying, oh, shoot, I gotta stop that. I got to stop the knee from coming through. So I'm going to put both hands here, and then she gets an arm. Or, oh, I need to, I need to roll through here or whatever. And then that's when she catches the neck or whatever. So she snatches up the submissions during the opponent trying to stop her from advancing position. When she gets to the crucifix position, she's absolutely deadly, and she gets there relatively often in the UFC, honestly. She's done it a few times now, and her ground and pound is solid from everywhere, but from that crucifix position, it's absolutely brutal. I do think that if this stays at the striking range for 5 rounds, it's going to be a clear victory for Manon. I think if we get to the grappling, it's going to be a clear victory for Blanchfield over 5 rounds. But I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry as that. I think we're going to get a bit of both, right? I think we're going to get some rounds from either at the other person's range, and I don't think either one can keep up at the other person's range. And I think that's what makes this fight so interesting and why it's so polarizing, because everybody seems to have a pretty strong take on who's going to win this fight. And for me, I've kind of been staying away from main events lately. I've been trying to anyway. I stayed away last week too from the main event. I probably shouldn't have. I was on the right side of it, but I stayed away. Plus, did you guys see that photo? Kiwi Brew put it out. I guess his daughter made it, where she, I guess his daughter, photoshopped Rose Namajunas' face on my body doing one of these breakdowns up here. That was the funniest gosh darn thing I've ever seen. That was hilarious. So apparently, my channel logo, this one right here on this shirt, you can get one at the link in the description. Like this logo right here looks like a crazy Rose Namajunas. Guys, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. Either way, I probably shouldn't have stayed away from last week's main event, but I did. It was a mistake. This week, I'm on the Blanchfield side, and I should have got to her earlier. I didn't place a bet yet. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So now we're just going to wait it out and see what happens. I don't know if I'll get there. I do feel pretty good about Blanchfield getting the win. I think I typically side with the grapplers over the strikers. I think Blanchfield's just going to be able to keep that pace, and I think she's going to be able to beat Manat over 5 rounds just with that pace and pressure. And I think it's going to be competitive, but I think just it's going to be clear who gets the win at the end, and I think it's going to be because Blanchfield's able to implement her grappling. So let me know what you have. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Your support means the most to me. Even those of you who don't like me, I appreciate you guys as well because you just leave a bunch of comments on the videos telling me how much I suck, and that does actually help the algorithm. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.